It's the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name's Sammy James. Welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be looking ahead to our trip to Newcastle United on Saturday, the longest away day of the season. Can we get a result at a ground that we've been particularly poor at over the years and bounce back from the disappointment against United on Sunday? We'll have the last words on that game, plus some discussion about off-the-pitch matters, because quite frankly, that's what feels has been in the discourse ever since that game on Sunday. I'm joined on the Thursday Club by Jack Collins. Hello.
Hello, Sammy. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Nice to see you. Nice top. This isn't very good for people listening to the podcast, but that is a naughty little number.
Yeah, my brother bought it for me for Christmas. This was my Christmas present. It's that Art of Football one with the 5 shirts on it. So I'm very pleased with it. It's been a mainstay in the wardrobe since Christmas Day. So maybe I shouldn't be wearing it so much. It wasn't any luck on Sunday night, but alas, we are where we are.
I do like the designs that the Art of Football make, and honestly, this isn't a spawn. I just don't like the AOF. I wish that wouldn't be there.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much you can do about it, unfortunately. So, yeah, I mean, look, it is what it is, but I like the little shirts, and I'm happy enough with it.
The shirts and design are beautiful.
There's actually a really cool Man United version of this. Not that we would wear it, but it has they have little arrows saying what each one is, like a little kind of comment on each of the shirts, which I thought would have been a nice touch, but alas, maybe in the next batch. If you're listening Art of Football, that's what I want.
Okay, yeah, and no AOF for Sammy, please, or just an option.
Don't put any branding on your own products.
I know, it is very rich. I mean, I'm happy to wear Adidas and Nike and Puma and not blink an eye, but, you know.
You are where you are.
Call me old-fashioned. Anyway, let's kind of look back at Sunday, Jack. It was a really... I didn't enjoy it at all, and not just because of the result, but I just thought it wasn't a very nice evening weather-wise. I just thought it was a really flat game. It was such a boring game, a bad result at the end of it. I just came away, and look, there are ups and downs with supporting a football club. I just felt like, oh God, why did I put myself through that?
Yeah, it was incredibly disappointing. I think as a spectacle as much as anything else, you know, when you come up against a big side, you obviously want to give them a game, which Fulham did to an extent, but not necessarily through the idea that, you know, United were particularly good or Fulham were particularly good, but just, you know, trying to take advantage of both sides of the fact we're quite bad. So you kind of look at that from a perspective of when a big club comes to town, you either want to be right in the heart of them and really stick it up them, or you want to kind of be impressed. And I was neither, right? Nothing happened in that fixture. And I think there's frustration around the fact that, once again, Fulham had a quite good first 20 minutes. I think the opening kind of elements of this game, we zipped the ball around quite nicely. There looked like there was a couple of overloads starting to get into the right areas. But I was really disappointed with how we faded away. And, you know, you go on to different things. And I was on the radio on Monday night talking about this game. And someone was like, well, you know, how do you feel about it? And I was like, well, I'm disappointed, obviously, in the result and the fact that, you know, and the performance. But I find it hard to say that Fulham deserved anything from the game. The frustration is that I don't think United did either. It was one of those games where if both teams had come out with 0 points, I think everyone would have been like, yeah, fair enough, reasonable. So there is, like, I think an overwhelming frustration that we've once again failed to be able to kick on. And as we're starting to see the league sort of break up a little bit into segments, we're starting to fall away from those challenging spots. And look, we sat here after West Ham and I said, I think that could be it. And you said, no, a couple of wins and we might be able to claw our way back into it. We obviously get the Leicester win. And then that kind of disappointment sets back in again after the performance on Sunday. And it does just feel like Fulham have missed a huge opportunity to turn this season, I think, from something that's been, you know, good and had excellent moments into something really, really special. And the points that we're leaving on the table against sides who, let's be frank, and, you know, United are a big club, but on Sunday they didn't prove by any manner that they were a better side. I didn't think there was much in it, but it wasn't that there was, you know, one team who were completely dominant and you lose that game. These games were playing against sides who are at the moment inferior, not necessarily in terms of player quality, but in terms of the way they're set up or how they're kind of put together at the moment. We're leaving those points on the table, and that is going to be the difference between doing what Bournemouth are doing and doing what Fulham are doing right now.
Yeah, I just felt like one of those as well. It feels like the fan base is quite grumpy and that's not necessarily just, or pretty much it's not anything to do with what's happening on the pitch, but I don't know, I feel like everyone's a bit down, which is obviously surprising when you consider that we are 10th in the league and still doing well. But we'll come on to some of the off the pitch stuff in a moment. But it's felt like quite a frustrating month to support Fulham. It's been a month since that game at Stamford Bridge, which will always be the highest of highs. And you look at the matches since, and obviously, like, going to Leicester and winning was great, but like, they are a terrible team. And if you look at all the results other than that and the performances as well, it's been just another lot of cases of what ifs, and we're not quite delivering our potential.
Yeah, look, this isn't new. Right, Silver Sides have in previous years, and I think we might be seeing it again, started really well in the season and faded towards the end of it. And if that's to do with the intensity that he demands from his players, or the fact that, safety is assured, or not necessarily not assured yet, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
At this point in the season, that there isn't quite so much of a hot start. And look, you can't have hot starts and keep them going through the entire season. That's not really how things work. But you have to have the ability to adapt your game. And I think that we've struggled in recent weeks to show that we can break down low blocks. And that's one of the things that you look at. And look, we've talked about it before, but this element where you look at the bottom five of the table and the top five of the table, and the fact that City are the only side in the top five Fulham haven't taken a point off. And even that game was Adama's, missing his XG masterclass, if you will.
Yeah.
Whereas you look at the bottom five of the table and Leicester are the only side that Fulham have not dropped a point to. That is incredibly frustrating, and it goes back to the whole Robin Hood thing and all of that, but that's sometimes, I think, said in jest. This is like a serious, how do Fulham kick on? Well, we've learned how to go toe-to-toe with the big boys. We've learned how to play against teams who open up, and where the game becomes transitional, we look really, really dangerous. But it's the games where teams are happy to sit in against us. And look, maybe that's a counter to where Manchester United are right now, that they were. They sat in deep. They tried to stifle Fulham through the middle. In the first half, it looked like there was space through there, and Fulham were able to kind of drive through it in certain areas. Second half, that disappeared. And we'd looked like, with Alex Iwobi a little bit off the boil, I thought, in the second half, we didn't really have any ideas, especially given that Ahmad and Robinson, I think, cancelled each other out on that left-hand side. It meant that both teams' attacking threat was minimised because their most dangerous player in some ways was basically having to keep an eye on one shoulder, basically. So there are frustrations around this game. I think there are frustrations around the fact that Alessandro Martinez tackle wasn't looked at, and then he goes on and scores the winner. There's frustrations about the fact that winner is so deflected, and obviously it loops up in the air and gets over Bernd Leno. All of it kind of adds in together, but at no point did I think the Fulham were going to score. And I think that's the kind of strange moment in that second half where you come to it and you think, well, what are we actually trying to do here? How are we trying to break this up? Those are the ones that I think frustrate me most. But I mean, look, maybe if that tackle gets looked at, it's not the first time that Alessandro's just jumped in 2-footed and then pretended to be injured to get away with it. Maybe if Adama Traore goes down rather than just being made of bricks, maybe the referee has a look at it. But yeah, I think overall, I think I'm loath to blame it on Manchester United because I thought they defended well and they took their chance. Lucky as it was when it came, it just felt like one of those games that was there for the taking, and Fulham never really seized the initiative in a way that you'd maybe hope.
Let's come on to the off-the-pitch stuff, because as I said at the top, it feels like it has been the discourse since the Manchester United game, and it certainly was the discourse in the run-up to it. This isn't going to be another 20 minutes of Jack and Sammy lecturing everyone about why £160 tickets are bad, because I think we've kind of crossed that and had this debate.
I also think that everyone's obviously entitled to their own opinions, but if you're defending that, then I'm not going to get through to you.
Yeah, but I thought it was just interesting to talk about the reaction and the discourse in the last few days, because, and again, I'm at loath to just try not to see the ex community of Fulham fans and just think that is all Fulham fans, because I think there is a real and maybe a worry for me that actually maybe this is only a problem for a very small minority of people, including us, and we want to think that it's bigger than it is, and actually a large amount of match-going Fulham fans shrug their shoulders, maybe realise that it's a bit expensive, but it really doesn't move their day in any way. But there has been what I can see to be a sizable amount of anger from lots of quarters, it feels like, towards the off-the-pitch issues at the club at the moment, speaking out against Alistair Mackintosh. There was a brilliant article from our own Drew Heatley about Ali Mack. Obviously, they discussed it extensively on Monday's podcast.
Yeah.
And there was a brilliant video, and you should go and check it out, from Joe Gunning, which is on X. We'll try and put a link in the description of the podcast and on the YouTube channel. And Joe, in this 2-minute video, it's been watched 65,000 times. It's been liked and retweeted a hell of a lot and commented on. And Joe is not saying anything that we haven't really said. You know, it's all the usual things, that he's pricing out the future fan base, that we're prioritising tourists over kind of loyal match-going fans. And Joe makes a really good point that, to be honest, if you're limited on cash right now, if you are a student or anything, it makes so much more sense just to be an away fan at the moment. Pay your £30. Half the games are in the south or in London anyway. And the cost that you would spend on some travelling going to those games, actually, by the time that you've bought tickets to go see games at Craven Cottage, it is
almost offset, yeah.
It was almost, and everyone knows that generally atmospheres away are generally much more fun than atmospheres at home. I just thought the reaction to his video was really interesting, and how many people resonated with that. And I think it's great that actually Joe, just putting up what's quite an authentic video online, he's not doing it as part of a brand like Fulhamish. He's just kind of done it off his own back. And that really seems to have resonated with a lot of people. And I thought that was particularly fascinating.
Yeah, look, I don't think that any of these issues are, new. We've got to a point where it's felt a lot of the time like we're banging our head against a wall when we're talking about ticket prices and talking about the fact that, ultimately, and Drew said it in his article, if you are a Fulham fan who maybe doesn't go every week or isn't a season ticket holder but has an affiliation to the club, and you have 2 kids right now, and you look at tickets to go and see Fulham, and then you'll be like, look at tickets at Queen's Park Rangers, you look at tickets to Brentford, and ultimately Fulham are going to lose not just projected fans, but also fans who are, maybe borderline or on the edge or not quite as dialed into things, to people around us. And that's a frustration. And ultimately, look, Fulham built our reputation on people not necessarily switching allegiances. That's maybe not the right thing to say, but a lot of people came down to Fulham in 2001, 2002, etc. when, we came up to the Premier League, because they were like, oh, that's a season ticket that's close to me and it's affordable. And those people have become Fulham fans. Not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them over the 20 years that have come since then. That has developed into a fully blown fandom. A lot of those people who came and were interested but didn't necessarily have a link to the club became season ticket holders, and they would have brought friends but also brought, family, etc., etc. That's how you grow a fan base. And, for all of their problems, Brentford are very good at doing that. They're very, very good. I was talking to my aunt about this yesterday. She was like, every cup game at Brentford is £15 if you're a member or a season ticket holder. There you go. It's a really easy win for everybody involved. And look, we can talk about the season ticket price for the Watford game and all of those things, and that was good from a Fulham perspective. I think we can all look at that and say that was positively done. But do you believe for a single second that if that was Manchester United that we'd drawn in the cup, that would have been the case, that we would have seen the same kind of initiative taking place in there? And I think that's what's so frustrating, is that this kind of idea of dynamic pricing. And I appreciate that obviously some games are going to be more expensive than others. That's okay, right? It's not this isn't a every game has to be the same price kind of thing. It's how are we driving this to the point where there are empty seats at the Cottage. Yes, okay, it's a wet, drizzly Sunday night and it's a bad time for people. But where there are people openly just wearing Manchester United regalia in the home ends and this is the issue with this, is not that those people have decided they want to go and see their football team, because a lot of people do want to go and do that. But that possibility is there, that Fulham are advertising general sale tickets in the newspapers 2 days before what should be, on paper, one of the biggest games of the season against one of the biggest clubs in the world. the fact that we're having to do this suggests that there is something deeply and intrinsically wrong with the strategy that Fulham are currently pursuing. And yet every time it's brought up to the powers that be at Fulham, to the board and to Alistair Mackintosh at FST meetings, in notes, whatever you see these, you read all of these things, it's we're very happy with the strategy we're pursuing. There's no, it's very, I told you so. Like if you're discussing a parent, why are you doing that? Why do I have to do that? Because I told you so. There's no discussion of what that means, what the actual depth is to that statement. It's almost like, that there can't be, like from a headspace that I'm looking at, there can't be a monetary advantage to not having the ground sold out. And whilst they will be like, oh, okay, yeah, well, we sold out all the boxes, I'll be like, that's completely irrelevant. These are two separate things. When you take into account the fact that ticket sales are not the majority of the money that the club make up in revenue because of TV rights and sponsorship deals and all of those things, like it doesn't add up. All the pieces aren't welding together correctly. And the fact that these aren't being discussed and elaborated on, it's just, oh yeah, we're just happy with it, suggests to me that there is a desire to keep something hidden from the fan base. And we keep going back to the same point. And as I say, it's banging our head against the wall. And perhaps, people talking about it a little bit more, this discussion that's going on, Joe's video, for example, continues to highlight, these things. When that publicity gets out, that's things that the club don't like. And ultimately, that's where we're at this point.
I guess for me, what's interesting here is there's been several iterations of protest, right? And look, we've been at the very heart of one of them. We weren't at the very heart of the yellow card protest, but we did, try to heavily publicise it as much as we could. A lot has been made of those protests and the relative ineffectiveness of both of them in terms of actually what it was meant to achieve, i.e. the problems are still here, the same people are still here, no specific action has ever been taken because of them. Does this time, if something organic is made almost via the community, i.e. there's not one massive body that kind of chooses the date and time of the protest, is there a chance this happens? Because it feels like a constant reoccurring theme. There was a large, chat on the Fulhamish WhatsApp group last night, and we discussed whether it would actually happen. And there's different options, isn't there? There's walk in early, there's walk in late. Don't walk in early. That's not a protest. Walk out early. There's obviously like drastic stuff that they would do in Germany, like throw tennis balls on the pitch. And by the way, like that's not what I'm saying to do here, but it is an option that is available. Like, are these going to happen, or is it just going to be a lot of talk, and actually when it comes to it, these games in February against Forest and Palace, or whenever we choose to do it, the Fulham fan base can't mobilise itself?
I don't know. It is the answer to that question. And I think that we can discuss it and talk about it and be frustrated with it, but there has to be an element of solidarity across the board, I think, to actually make that happen. And whilst I think what we're seeing on social media does feel organic and does feel like a genuine anger, whether that is taken from words to action, it is a real different question. And I suppose we'll have to kind of monitor it and ride that wave and see what happens. But it does feel like the kind of thing that, will frustrate the club. If there is genuine apathy and anger towards the board and the people running the club that feels like it needs to be brought to national attention once again. We've seen some really good articles. There was an excellent one from Daniel Story in the Eye a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Henry Winter has repeatedly pushed this as an angle as well. There are people talking about this in the mainstream. Archie Tutt does a wonderful job of talking about it whenever he has that opportunity as well. So when you're kind of looking at those things, there is national media presence. Fulham are never going to be front page, right? Like it's never the way that it's going to operate at this club. Even when things were at their bleakest in the mid-90s, Fulham were never front page news, right? It has to be, we have to be aware of the fact that there are always going to be stories that supersede ours. But if there is a genuine feeling of frustration, then, you need to look to people to stand up and actually act upon that, so that it's not the same we have a protest, some people get involved, some people don't, nothing changes, there's a little bit of newspaper coverage, off we go. It has to come from a place, I think, of community and solidarity, and we wait to see what that looks like, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say, like, you know, we'll do whatever we can in order to publicise any protest that happens, because I think we support it, right? Like, I support it, you support it. I think everyone we know supports the idea of something being said, being done. But that is really hard. And we've found out firsthand how hard that is to turn kind of collective anger into something practical that actually sends a message. Trying to convince thousands of people to leave the football match early when it's 0-0 and we're playing well against Nottingham Forest is a really, really difficult thing to do. Bringing banners into the ground, again, possible, not easy. You saw what happened to that Tottenham banner on Sunday. You know, immediately was like targeted, but they effectively achieved their aim with that banner. You know, the Time for Change one, because it got photoed and even if it got confiscated in the end. You know, convincing people to walk in late. Well, at what point does that just look like people got stuck in the pub? Or what way can that be spun as like, oh yeah, people always turn up late? So
I have seen this done once really effectively. I think it was Lazio against Roma, and they like flooded in after 20 minutes. It was wild seeing the complete away end empty and just watching them flood in. So it can be done, and it can be done effectively. I think with something like that, it's obviously harder to kind of publicize in some ways, because, you know, you get a picture of a load of empty seats and, you know, the majority has been like, oh, you know, people just didn't turn up. It's not quite as maybe as grabbing a headline.
The walking out is, and look, Liverpool did it to great effect all those years ago against Sunderland. It was something like the 79th minute or something like that. They were losing, or they actually lost, I think. They were winning maybe at the time it happened and ended up losing the game. Who knows if it was because of the walkout or just whether they lapsed in concentration against Sunderland. But it was incredibly effective at getting attention. Yeah. It is an effective form of protest, but it really requires an awful lot of people to buy into it. I'd love to buy into it. I'll do it happily.
Yeah, but that's fine. Like, you know, that has to be a sort of over 50% of people walking out, or it, you know, it doesn't kind of make sense. And I think that's a hard one. You know, equally, you know, I don't obviously want this to happen, but if you were, say, you know, organising this for the 79th minute, you know, the club obviously 1879 or something like that, you know, to do it in that regard, it's easy to, you know, as you say, to look at it and be like, oh, at 0-0, people probably be, you know, less likely to actually make a stand because they're intrigued by the game, and that's ultimately what we are there for, and we want to be part of, and we want to be, you know, able to do that week in, week out, which is the reason that protests have to happen in the first place. Fine, but equally, if you're 4-0 down and 50% of the people walk out, then it just looks like loads of people have left. Like, you know, it's a very difficult thing to maintain in terms of what it looks like and making a point, because there are so many different reasons that people would effectively leave or walk out early of a game. And I think that's a very hard thing to kind of balance, especially in the context of a game where you don't know what's going to happen at any given point. But I think it takes it back to an interesting kind of angle on this, which is Marco Silva has constantly said, you know, that he wants, you know, the atmosphere to be better. He wants the supporters to be behind the team. And this is also a very difficult one for him. Obviously, the club are the people paying his wages. They are the people who, you know, who help to build what he wants to put together on the pitch. So him speaking out against it is very difficult, but equally there is only so much you can hear of him saying, oh, we want the supporters to be fully behind the team, and not understand the context behind why people are maybe not going to as many matches, why the games aren't selling out, for example, because, you know, without those two contexts coming together, you know, you can say, like, oh yeah, I'd like to support the team, I'd like everyone to be here, and I'd like it to be noisy and as loud as it can be. Agreed, we all would, but we'd also be able to, like, you know, have Fulham fans left, right and centre in all of these seats because they can afford to go. And that's, I think, where the kind of dichotomy lies, in that it's much harder to get people to speak out, or, you know, get the players or the manager to speak in a way that would maybe actually influence club policy, because, you know, they're also, this is their employer.
The fans have to use that threat, and I think previously I might have said, or a lot of people have said, you know, I don't want any protest to harm the team. I think at some point, sadly, and it's not the intended consequence at all. But at some point, I think for a protest to be effective, almost it's an unavoidable consequence of that is that it might...
You can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs, etc.
At least it's in a situation where we know that Fulham aren't, like, if we lost a game because we walked out, and I don't think there's a direct correlation in that anyway, Fulham aren't getting relegated here, and the greater good is that all Fulham fans can attend matches. You know, I think if you offered most Fulham fans, look, do we get this problem solved, but we finish 11th this year rather than 9th?
Yeah,
I think that's all. I think that's all a consequence that we would, you know, begrudgingly take, and we might just have to take here. And look, I really hope it develops. I don't know what's going to happen. I think the more people that speak, though, and not wait on big organisations, or big's the wrong word, but, you know, I think some people say, oh, it needs to come from an FST, or it needs to come from a Fulhamish, Fulham Focus, all of these groups, whatever. Actually, no, I think individuals, as proven by Joe, can have just as much impact. You can
maybe more.
Yeah, potentially more. Like, because look at what he's done. I don't think anyone has put forward a case like that in a long time. I think it's really impressive. So we'll put a link to it. Have a watch of Joe's video if you haven't already. And we will see. Watch this space, as they say. We'll take a break there. Afterwards, we'll quickly look ahead to Newcastle on Saturday. Part 2 of the Fulhamish podcast. It is Sammy here with Jack Collins on the Thursday Club. Let's look ahead then to Newcastle away on Saturday at St James's Park. We obviously got a very good result against Newcastle back in September, a 3-1 win. Feels like a lot of things have changed since that afternoon. That was definitely probably Newcastle at one of their lowest ebbs. It's been weird watching Newcastle this year. Like, obviously they didn't have a great season last season, but I think everyone put that down to the fact that they struggled to cope with the demands of the Premier League and Champions League. I think a lot of people thought this could be a good year for you, Newcastle. Yeah. And then they started like pretty rubbish. Like, I remember the game they lost at Brentford and this is only maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I think they lost 4-2. Like, they kind of got caught in that Brentford let's score loads of goals washing machine that seemed to happen at the start of the season at the G-Tech. But Newcastle were woeful.
Yeah, they were really poor.
And then basically since that game, they have turned it on ahead and been absolutely brilliant. They got 9 wins in a row. It came to a crash in the end against the brilliant Bournemouth team that has been widely talked about. Got a bit back up to speed on Saturday, a pretty routine win away at Southampton.
They weren't great in that game, I got to say. They did enough. And obviously, if you have goal scorers, you can beat Southampton. But, like, they yeah, funny that. But... like, they weren't great, and I am interested in this because they were excellent in that 9-game spell, right? And they finally felt like they had the balance right in the midfield with Sandro Tonali playing at the base, but Bruno picking the ball up deep when they were in possession, getting those kind of twin players working in the kind of pivot, if you will, has been excellent. Joel Linton then felt like he had a space. They stopped with a weird experiment of trying to like squeeze Harvey Barnes or Anthony Gordon in on the right wing and just gave it to Jacob Murphy. It gives them far more balance in that side. Their fullbacks look really good at the moment. Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall, both obviously ex-Chelsea players. And they feel like they've started to get some of these defenders back into shape. So, you know, on paper, that's a very good side, right? I think what's interesting about this Newcastle side is that Eddie Howe said after the Bournemouth game that they felt really tired, really fatigued for the first time. And I was like, oh, that's interesting because everyone's had similar Christmas, New Year periods. And I think that there is obviously an element of tiredness working with everybody at the moment. But it's not like they're playing European football. It's not like they're having to battle. I know that they're obviously in the League Cup semi-finals, but... you know, I thought it was intriguing that he was like, we were emotionally and physically tired. And I was like, oh, okay. That's an interesting statement to make at this point. Now, obviously, they have that League Cup second leg to think about against Arsenal, which is going to be an interesting one because they are 2-0 up in there. And to get to another final, I think, would be a major, major step in the right direction from Newcastle as a project trajectory. So that is going to be first and foremost, but also getting back into the Champions League remains a major aim for Newcastle. So they're having to balance things, having to fight a war on 2, maybe 3 fronts going towards the end of the season, but definitely 2 for now. And I wonder if there is a little bit more rest and rotation with that Arsenal game in mind, which is obviously in that first week of February. So
It's the game after us, isn't it? So they've got 4 days after our game looking ahead to the Arsenal one. And we know what it was like in the Cup semi-finals last year, where we'd have all happily thrown a league game or two in order to try and win that semi-final.
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously slightly different for Newcastle. They have been in a final at Wembley in recent years, and I think that our one was
But they're so desperate to win a trophy.
Of course they are. Yeah. And I get that, right? So there is an element of, I wonder if there is some rotation in this game, if they give players a little bit of a rest before the Arsenal game to try and make sure everyone's on full form. If this was 0-0, I think they'd be thinking about that a bit more. I think at 2-0, they'll fancy themselves to see it out. So I don't know exactly how much rotation there's going to be, but you do have to think about it as always. How much is everybody going to be able to give? How much are they going to put to the wall if they know that in 4 days' time they could be in one of the biggest games, especially at St James's Park, second leg there? Imagine what the Gallagate would be like if they win that game or they get through. It's going to be a very, very special experience, I imagine. It's a very special place and a special stadium. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if there is a banner in the Newcastle end during this game, which is focus on the cup final, and because I've seen this, right? So Real Betis, my Spanish club, were in the Copa del Rey final a couple of years back, and the league game before they were playing Elche at the Villamarín, and if they won, they would have moved into the Champions League spots for the next season. And they lost the game 1-0. Everyone was well distracted. I've never seen anything quite like it. And at the end, 20,000 fans stayed in the kind of ultra section behind the goal and basically were like, we don't care. We don't care that you just lost to Elche. We don't care about the Champions League. Win the Copa del Rey. And it was really kind of, weird, moving, very strange experience, but very special.
Can you confirm if they did win the Copa del Rey?
They won the Copa del Rey.
Oh, okay, thank God. I was wondering how that story ended.
No, it was very good. Very enjoyable. But I wonder if there's a similar kind of mentality going on at Newcastle.
It's going to be one of those, isn't there, whenever someone goes and tackles Alexander Isak, every
sharp
new
intake of
there's
breath.
going to be a bit of a I guess maybe it's normally we're talking about after the Lord Mayor's show, but I guess we hopefully can take advantage of it maybe being a before the Lord Mayor's show.
I think what is also kind of interesting about this, and we go back to our discussion about that top 5 and the bottom 5, is that Fulham tend to be better against teams who do want the ball a little bit more, who want to dominate possession and who leave space for Fulham to attack in transition. These are the games that Fulham have done well in. These are the games that we've seen open up and we've been able to throw a few punches against teams who are at the very top of this table. And I think that is the kind of game that this will be. And again, that's not to say that Fulham will go and win this game, but I think that there will be more opportunities to stretch our legs and to be able to potentially create goal-scoring opportunities than there were against Manchester United, who came in, sat with 5 at the back and played with a game plan that looked like they were looking for a point, right? And I think that ultimately this game should effectively, on paper at the very least, suit Fulham a little bit more in that it should open up and allow a few players to stretch their legs, but equally, the threat that Newcastle pose in those situations with, the ability to move the ball that they have in that central midfield area, the running of Joel Linton, the physicality that they can put together in central midfield, Anthony Gordon herring off that left wing, and obviously man on fire, Alex Isak. This is not me saying that Fulham are going to go and win this game. What I am saying is that I wonder if a game that does open up a little bit more allows Fulham to play a little bit more of the football that they want to play.
I do think that Fulham have almost been the opposite team a lot of times this season. In the games where you've thought, no chance we go to Anfield and give them any problems, and you saw us go to Anfield and cause them an awful lot of problems. No chance we'll go to City. Oh, wait, hang on, we suddenly performed there. I can weirdly see us putting in something decent at Newcastle. Whereas on Sunday, I'm turning up to Craven Cottage thinking United are the worst team in the league and I'm expecting an easy 3 points, and Fulham seem to struggle. And it's, I just, look, I've got nothing more than just spidey sense on this. I don't think we'll win necessarily, but I would not be shocked to see a score draw here for Fulham at all. I think that is just what Fulham have been a bit like this season.
I think we'll see a performance. That's what I think we'll see.
Yeah.
Whether that ends up with 3 points or no points, I think we'll see Fulham turn up in this game and play the kind of way that we expect them to, in a way that I don't think we have seen probably since the Chelsea game.
Yeah.
We were okay against Bournemouth, I think, at home. But, generally, I don't think we put in together a complete 90-minute impressive performance.
And same with Leicester. We got the job done in the second half and played quite well, but that first half was drab against Leicester, and eventually we beat a poor side. Yeah. I agree with you. I think this could potentially be the first full 90-minute performance since Chelsea. Whether that equals
losing 5-0.
No, I know, but whether that equals a win, I don't know. But I've just got a funny feeling that like Marco's not going to have stood us well for what happened on Sunday. In terms of lineup, I mean, as much as I think that we were poor on
Sasha didn't get booked.
Yeah, we've got a midfield. Well done, Sasha Lukic. That is good news. I think it would have been a tough one going in there without someone like Sasha. I mean, for me, I would like to see Issa Diop come in for Joachim Andersen.
Yeah.
But I don't think we will.
No, me neither. I think you're right. Look, I think the frustrating bit about Andersen's performance on Sunday night was not necessarily the defensive element of it. He actually handled, I thought, Rasmus Højlund quite well. It probably helped that every time Rasmus Højlund saw the ball up in the air, he just grabbed Andersen, which was a really strange way to attempt to actually play football. But it was what it was. But I thought his defensive work was actually quite smart through the course of that game. But, we talked about Andersen, and we always talk about his ability to pick a pass. And we just couldn't get out. It was really, really bizarre. These long lumped balls forward aimlessly, aimed at nobody. It just felt like he lost the ability to play those passes that he's become so well known for. Now, maybe this should be given more credit to United in terms of the way that they set up to frustrate, and the three at the back meant that there wasn't that kind of standard long ball through to the striker that we've used so much. But equally,
it wasn't like he was pressured always. It wasn't like he was pressed to death.
No.
Quite often they let him have the ball, but he had
But yeah, I don't know if there was any targets.
He looked like he had no options.
Yeah.
And he was sometimes looking frustrated, like, someone give me an option here. But at the same time, normally you expect Andersen
to put it on a dime. Yeah, it really did feel like that was the first game I've seen where his passing just went completely and utterly awry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe it's a blip. Maybe it's something he comes back from. But I don't think he's been quite the same since he came back from his injury.
No. I just find it incredibly harsh. And against what we normally expect from Silva's meritocracy, and I know that Issa Diop made a small mistake against Bournemouth, but if Diop...
He's also fouled.
Yeah, if Diop's being dropped out of the team for a small mistake against Bournemouth, then Andersen deserves to be dropped by the same measure for the performances that we've seen recently, but especially the one at United. But other than that, I think that obviously Harry Wilson feels unlikely.
I think we might have seen Adama anyway.
Mm.
I wonder if this is a game plan where Fulham look to use that Adama spring as a quite a potent weapon.
Can we see him on the right though? It was bloody weird seeing him on the left. It was that was odd.
I think he will play on the right. I mean, look, also it depends on, look, we've talked about this before, but Adama is often used to target a specific player, right? They often use Adama in a way that you go, okay, that's the fullback I want you to target, and Iwobi just plays on the other side. That's how it kind of operates. So I wonder what that looks like. Are they going to target Tino Livramento, or are they going to target Lewis Hall? My hunch would be they'd target Lewis Hall because he likes to get forward a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I can see either side, and I wonder if there's just an element that Fulham sort of switch. The difference is because Anthony Gordon plays on the right, with Alex Iwobi playing in that kind of deeper role against City and against Liverpool for the first couple of minutes before the red card. I wonder if they'd utilise a similar system in order to try and double down on that side against Anthony Gordon and stop him having the impact on the game that perhaps that he might be able to.
Yeah, right. Well, 3:00 kickoff on Saturday. If you're making that long journey up to the northeast, I believe we've sold out the allocation. Bit of controversy over that because Fulham took a smaller allocation than I think that many fans would have expected that we could have sold. But anyway, looks like there's going to be a good contingent up there in the northeast. So safe travels if you are heading to St James's Park. And fingers crossed, we can get 3 points from the game.
Get some bubblegum trebles if you're up there. Fire.
What's a bubblegum treble?
They're just treble drinks, but they were bubblegum flavoured.
Oh, right, okay.
They're really, really nice. Like, absurdly nice.
Nice. I mean, any treble you're never drinking a treble for the niceness.
No, but these were actually really delicious. They also do Vimto trebles. They're also good.
Okay.
Look, man, Newcastle's just a great city. Have a good time. Enjoy yourselves.
It is a good city. It is a good city. Right, Jack, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sammy. Always a pleasure.
Hopefully Fulham can get the business done on Saturday. Have a great weekend, whatever you're doing. We will be back on Monday reviewing everything that happens at St James's Park. So until then, come on, you Whites.